She did not plan to buy a dog that day, and she did not plan to stop walking. But when she saw the German Shepherd lying on the dirt with a rope around his neck and a piece of cardboard that said only $10, something inside her stopped working the way it used to. Because the dog was not asking for help and he was not trying to run, he was just waiting, and she knew that looked too well to ignore it. Let me take you back to where it all began. Hannah Reed had learned how to keep moving even when her body begged her to stop, and that skill followed her home from the war whether she wanted it or not. Because once you train yourself to survive, resting feels like danger and silence feels louder than noise. So she walked through the flea market that morning not to buy anything but to avoid going home to a house that felt too empty to sit inside for long. She kept her hands in her jacket pockets and her head low, passing tables with old tools and cracked dishes, listening to people talk without really hearing them. And then she saw the dog near the fence, lying close to the ground like he was trying to make himself smaller. And what struck her first was not the wounds or the thin body but the way his eyes stayed steady when she stopped in front of him. Because most hurt animals either pull away or reach out, and this one did neither. She stood there longer than she meant to, feeling the familiar pressure in her chest, the one that came before her breath got tight, and she reminded herself to count quietly like she had been taught. But then the man holding the rope shifted his weight and said, $10, that's all he's worth, doesn't do much? And Hannah felt heat rise up her neck because she had heard people say the same thing about soldiers who came back different, about people who did not smile enough or speak enough, or sleep enough to be comfortable around. She knelt down slowly, not wanting to scare the dog, and when she reached out her hand she stopped just short of touching him, because she needed to know if he would move away. But he didn't. He stayed exactly where he was, and she felt something break open in her chest that had been locked shut for a long time. "Hey!" she said softly, not to the man but to the dog, and her voice sounded strange to her own ears because she had not used it gently in a long time, and the dog's ears shifted just a little, not alert, not afraid, just aware, like someone who had learned that reacting too fast could cost you. The man cleared his throat and said, "He won't make you happy," and Hannah almost laughed because happiness was not something she was looking for anymore. She was just trying to make it through her days without falling apart in places where no one could help her back up. She asked, "Where did you get him?" And the man shrugged and said, "Found him like that." And Hannah knew that was not the whole truth, but she also knew that sometimes the truth did not matter as much as what you chose to do next. She reached into her pocket and felt the folded bill she had set aside for gas, and for a moment she thought about turning away, because taking the dog meant responsibility, and responsibility meant feeling things again. But then the dog shifted his head and rested his chin on the dirt, and the quiet trust in that simple movement undid her. She handed the money over without another word, took the rope, and when she stood up the dog followed her without pulling or lagging behind, like he had already decided. And as they walked away, Hannah felt a strange mix of fear and calm, because something had changed and she did not yet know if it would save her or undo her completely. At home she moved through the house slowly, showing him the water bowl and the corner where he could lie down, and she noticed how he scanned each room before settling, not nervous but careful, and she said, "You can stay." Even though she knew he already planned to, and when night came and the dark pressed in the way it always did, Hannah lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting her breaths, waiting for the memories to rush in like they usually did. But when her chest tightened and her hands began to shake, the dog was there beside the bed, close enough to remind her she was not alone but far enough to give her space, and she whispered, "Whisk," without thinking, because the name felt right, and he stayed, and for the first time in a very long while, Hannah did not feel like she was the only one still fighting something no one else could see. She woke up around 3 in the morning the way she usually did. Her hands were gripping the blanket like it was a rope, and her heart was going fast, too fast, like it was trying to run before she could stand. Her throat was dry, her skin damp. The room was dark but not unfamiliar, yet it still didn't feel like home. And then she saw him, Whisk, curled at the side of the bed, not asleep, just resting with his eyes open, looking at nothing. Or maybe looking at her. She didn't say anything. She didn't move. He didn't either. But she breathed easier, just a little, and somehow that little was enough. The next morning, she boiled eggs and sliced one in half, set it in the bowl near him. He sniffed, looked up at her, then walked away and laid down near the back door. She shook her head. "Suit yourself," she said. Her voice felt rough, like it hadn't been used in days. It hadn't. She didn't go out much, didn't talk much, not since she came back. People said welcome home and then they moved on. She did too. Sort of. That afternoon, she sat on the porch with a mug of coffee and watched Whisk stare out at the street like he was waiting for something. Not excited. Not nervous. Just waiting. "What happened to you?" she asked, not expecting an answer. "Where'd they leave you?" His tail didn't move. His ears didn't twitch. But he turned his head slightly, like he was listening. And maybe he was. She didn't know much about dogs. But she knew what it meant to be quiet by choice. She lived like that now. Not because she didn't have things to say, but because saying them didn't change what happened. And sometimes silence was safer than memory. She remembered being in the field, kneeling beside a boy whose leg was gone, pressing down with both hands while he cried out for someone who wasn't her. She remembered the color of his blood and the way her voice stayed steady even when everything else broke. That memory came back often, especially when she tried to sleep. That night, the wind knocked something off the kitchen counter, a pan or a glass, and she flinched hard, heart racing, body frozen. She couldn't breathe for a second. Her whole body locked. But before she could hit the floor, Whisk was beside her. He didn't bark. He didn't jump. He just stood there, eyes steady, body still, like a guard, or maybe a witness. She crouched slowly, pressed her back to the wall. Her fingers trembled. Whisk sat next to her without touching, just being there, like he knew. "You feel it too," she whispered. His eyes didn't leave hers. Something about the way he watched her made her feel like he had seen people fall apart before, and stay that way, but he wasn't leaving. He didn't seem surprised. In fact, he looked like he'd been waiting for this moment. For her, the next few days moved quietly. She gave him water, offered food. Sometimes he ate, sometimes he didn't. He followed her from room to room, not close, just enough to keep her in view. If a door closed, he waited outside. If she opened it, he looked up but never pushed past. On the 5th night, she fell asleep sitting up on the couch, a notebook in her lap, pen still uncapped. She hadn't written a word. She was trying, though. That counted for something. When she woke, he was sitting near the doorway, like he'd stayed up to keep watch. And maybe he had. The limp in his leg hadn't gone away, so she called a local vet and made an appointment. When they arrived, the receptionist asked for a name. She paused. "Whisk," she said. The woman smiled. "Like a whisker?" "No," she replied. "Like soft." The vet, a woman named Dr. Neely, greeted them kindly and took her time. She examined Whisk's legs and touched gently around the shoulder. "You said he's not vocal? Doesn't make a sound," Hannah said. "Doesn't bark. Doesn't whine. Just stares." "He seems trained," the vet said casually. "The way he moves. Quiet. Disciplined. Not typical for strays." Hannah stayed silent. She didn't want to guess. "Not yet. There's an odd scar on the back of the neck," Dr. Neely said. "Could be from a chip removal, but I'll try scanning anyway." She pulled a handheld scanner from the counter, ran it slowly along Whisk's side, and nothing happened. Then she moved toward the base of his neck. A small beep. The vet froze. Her brows pulled together. "That's strange," she muttered. "What?" "This isn't a normal pet chip," she said, squinting at the screen. "This one has a prefix I haven't seen in years. It starts with T8M. That's usually assigned to dogs in federal service, military, or trauma units. But it's not a full read. It's damaged." Hannah's breath caught. "So he was trained?" "Highly likely," the vet said. "And not for combat. These numbers are usually tied to therapy units, especially ones involved with child trauma or war displacement programs." Hannah swallowed hard. Her palms were sweating. Her chest was tight again, but not with fear. With memory. She had seen dogs like that overseas. At one clinic, there was a shepherd that used to sit beside children while they had their wounds cleaned. Calmed them, kept them still. She never knew the dog's name, but she remembered the way it breathed slowly, always watching, always steady. The same way Whisk watched her now. "Can you get more info from the chip?" she asked. "I can try, but it looks like someone tried to disable it. the vet said. Might have been sold through back channels. Could be a survivor from a shutdown program. It's rare, but it happens. Hannah felt a cold wave rise in her. She nodded, paid for the visit, and walked Whisk slowly back to the truck. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat on the floor with a photo album she hadn't opened in months. Inside were pictures from Afghanistan. Smiling kids, dusty tents, nurses with tired faces. She flipped slowly until she reached one image near the back. 2 boys sitting against a wall. Between them, a dog. A German shepherd. She leaned closer. Same fur pattern. Same eyes. No collar. Just stillness. "Is it you?" she whispered. Whisk blinked. That night, she dreamed of the clinic and the dust and the bombs. But this time, when she woke up sweating and dizzy, Whisk was pressing against her legs, grounding her. She didn't have to say a word. He already knew. She stayed sitting on the floor longer than she meant to. Her legs had gone numb, but she didn't move. Whisk had his head resting lightly on her thigh now, like he knew the shaking had almost started again but didn't want to scare it. Her hands were resting flat on her knees, open, still, for the first time in months, maybe years. She looked down at him and said softly, "You used to do this for someone else, didn't you?" He didn't blink. She nodded to herself, then whispered, "You don't have to fix me." And still he stayed. The next morning, she sat at the table with a bowl of oatmeal that had gone cold. She wasn't hungry, just holding the spoon and staring out the window. The trees across the street didn't move. The whole block was still. She finally stood, walked to the back door, and opened it for Whisk. He walked out slowly, took a few steps into the sunlight, and laid down. He didn't run. He didn't explore. He just laid down like he'd done this routine before, like he didn't need new things, just quiet ones. The vet had called back. The number on the chip didn't bring up any personal info, only a retired designation. T-8M-1124. All other files were locked. "Sorry," Dr. Neely had said. But he wasn't just a therapy dog. This one was part of a field unit, a specialized response team, used after school bombings, refugee rescues, clinic assaults. His history's not public. Honestly, I shouldn't have even seen what I saw. Hannah hung up quietly. The idea that Whisk had been there, had seen what she'd seen, made the world feel smaller. It made her feel less alone, but also more scared. Because what happens to people or dogs when the work is over but the noise never leaves? That night, she pulled her mattress off the bed frame and laid it directly on the floor. She couldn't explain why. Maybe it felt less like falling if she was already close to the ground. Whisk curled up across from her. They watched each other until her eyes closed. But they didn't stay closed for long. Somewhere around midnight, her mind pulled her backward. She was in the field again. Hot, fast. Someone was screaming for a medic. Then came the blast. Her hands were covered in something red. A child's voice called out and then stopped. She woke up choking on air. Her palms pressed to her chest. She couldn't breathe. Her chest wouldn't open. Her fingers clawed at the blanket. Then she felt him. Whisk pushed his head gently under her hand. Not hard, just enough. He climbed slowly onto the mattress, curled against her side, and placed his head near her ribs. He didn't lick. He didn't shift. Just breathed. In. She began to match him. First forced, then softer, then real. Her body stopped shaking after a minute. She pulled the blanket tighter and whispered, "Thank you." Pause. Then again lower. "I don't know who you were trained for, but I'm glad you found me." He blinked once, then closed his eyes, and stayed. In the morning, she stood in the kitchen sipping coffee and staring at a yellow sticky note on the fridge. On it were 4 words she had written months ago. Go outside. Say hi. She tore it down and threw it in the trash. Felt like a lie now. "We don't do small talk," she said to Whisk. He was lying near the door, watching her like usual. His eyes soft, tired, but focused. She leaned on the counter. "I had people who used to ask if I was okay. I'd say yeah even when I wasn't. It got easier to just not talk. Easier to not say anything. You ever do that? Whisk lifted his head slightly. Just a bit. I think you do, she nodded. I think you know what it means to shut it all down. That afternoon she took him back to the vet for another look at the leg. They were in the small waiting room when a little girl walked in with her father. She was maybe 7. Freckles. Thin arms. She had a small bandage on her cheek. She saw Whisk and froze, then smiled. Can I pet him? Hannah looked down. Whisk was already sitting upright. Still. Calm. Like a statue. You can try, Hannah said. The girl stepped forward slowly. Whisk didn't move. She reached her hand out, paused, then placed it on his head. He didn't lean in. He didn't pull away. Just accepted it. The girl smiled wider. He's really soft, she said. He reminds me of the dog from the refugee tent. The one that used to sit with me. Hannah's throat tightened. The father looked at his daughter, then back at Whisk. That dog was in Jordan, he said. You remember that? She nodded. Yeah. He didn't talk either. Hannah couldn't speak. Not for a moment. The little girl turned to go, and Whisk watched her leave like he'd been trying to remember her too. Was it you? Hannah whispered. His tail moved once. Barely. But it moved. She drove home in silence. That night she opened the closet where she kept her field box. Her photos, her patches, her ID tag. She pulled out an old paper folder with photos from her last unit. There, taped in one corner, was a photo of a therapy dog. It was taken at a refugee clinic. A German shepherd, sitting between 2 girls. One of them holding his ear like a stuffed animal. His eyes looked the same. I think I found you, she whispered. I think you're him. She turned to look at Whisk. He was lying there, still watching her. Always watching her. Just like he did from the first moment. She took a shaky breath. The pieces were lining up, but she still didn't know the full story. Who trained him? Who abandoned him? Who else he had helped? All she knew was he found her too, and she wasn't ready to let him go. Not again. Not ever. The sound that triggered it wasn't even loud. Just metal scraping concrete. A dropped wrench rolling into the corner. But that was all it took. Her breath stopped before she knew why. Her knees locked. Her chest didn't rise. She was standing in the garage, but her brain had already left. Her hands started to tremble. She reached for the shelf to hold herself steady, but missed. The box she touched fell with a soft clatter. But to her it sounded like something worse. Much worse. She hit the floor before she could think. Just like before. She pulled her knees to her chest, her arms tight around them. But the images were still coming. Fast and sharp. Blood. Screaming. The smell of burned rubber. The way the boy's hand felt in hers when he slipped away. Her eyes shut tight, but her body wasn't listening to her anymore. And then Whisk. He didn't run to her. He walked. Slow. Intentional. No panic. No noise. He laid down beside her and leaned his body against her back. Just enough to keep her from tipping further. His breathing was steady. Not loud. Just enough to hear if she listened. He nudged her hand gently, once, then stayed still. She didn't open her eyes, but she felt him. Felt the warmth, the weight, the choice. He was choosing to stay in the dark with her. Not drag her out. Not fix it. Just stay. Her breath came back in pieces. Shaky, then fuller. Her grip on her knees loosened. One of her hands moved to his back. Flat. She didn't pet him. She just let it rest there. His ribs moved under her palm. Slow and even. She focused on that. Matched it. Counted. She didn't speak. He didn't need her to. That's when she knew for sure. This wasn't something he'd been taught once and forgotten. This wasn't a trick. This was memory. Muscle and meaning. He had done this before. Probably more times than she could imagine. He had been someone's anchor. Maybe more than one someone. And now he was hers. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not comfort. Not peace. Just presence. That night, she didn't move Whisk off the mattress. She left the lights dim. She didn't explain anything out loud, not even to herself. But when she fell asleep, her breathing stayed steady. For once, she didn't wake up gasping. She woke up at sunrise, still tired, but not broken. She walked into the kitchen. Whisk followed, as always. She filled his bowl. He didn't eat right away, just looked at her. "You're not mine," she said quietly. "But you came anyway." He laid down near the table. "I used to think it would never stop," she added, voice cracking. "The memories, the guilt, the numbness. I thought I'd either feel nothing or feel too much. And then you just sat beside me. Like that was enough." Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. Not yet. She picked up the photo again. The one from the clinic. Held it up beside him. "You were there," she said. "You were really there." Her hand shook. "And somehow, you ended up tied to a fence, sold for $10 by someone who didn't even ask your name." Whisk's eyes stayed on her. No blinking, no turning away, just like the first time. "You found me," she whispered. "Just in time." She leaned down slowly, rested her forehead against his. "So I'm not gonna leave you behind either." Her voice trembled. "We're both still breathing. That has to count for something." Later that day, she walked into the spare room and opened the closet where she kept her old duffel from deployment. Inside was a folded program flyer from a military outreach center she'd avoided calling for years. She pulled it out and stared at the number. She still didn't call, but she didn't throw it away either. That night, she wrote a note in her journal. Just 6 words. "He stays. I stay. We heal." And then, without thinking too hard, she added a line under it. "His name is Whisk. Mine is Hannah. We're both still here." She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew how this part ended. Not with running, not with hiding, not with forgetting. It ended with staying, with letting one silent dog remind her that not everything broken needs to be thrown away. Some things are meant to be found again, and when they are, they don't leave. They stay. The call ended, but Hannah didn't move. Her phone stayed in her hand. The weight of it didn't feel real. She looked at Whisk again, and her throat burned. "You stayed with him," she said quietly. "Even when they moved him. Even when he was dying." Her voice cracked. "And when it was over, nobody kept you. They just let you go." Whisk opened his eyes but didn't lift his head. He just looked at her. Not waiting, not judging, just there. That was the part that undid her. He didn't ask anything from her. Not once. Not even now. And still he stayed. Later that day, she drove to a small park just outside town. She didn't know why. Maybe to breathe. Maybe to think. Whisk sat in the back seat, upright and alert the whole time. She parked near the edge of the grass where no one else was close by. The trees rustled lightly, but she didn't focus on them. She opened the back door and let Whisk step out. He didn't rush. He walked slowly, checking the area like he always did. Always watching. Always quiet. They found a bench and she sat. Whisk laid down at her feet. It was warm, but not too hot. She leaned back, hands in her lap, thinking. Maddie. A boy with no family. A boy who only felt safe near one dog. A boy who carried his own war inside his chest. She hadn't treated him personally. There were too many kids. Too many wounds. But now it all came back. The tents. The heat. The cries. That one photo. That one dog. Her mind couldn't let go of it. Not now. Not when he was lying beside her. An older woman walked by on the path. She gave a polite smile. "That's a good boy you've got there." Hannah nodded. "Yeah, he is." The woman paused. "Funny. Looks just like the dog my daughter used to talk about. From overseas. She was stationed in a camp with a therapy unit. Said a shepherd used to sit outside the clinic all day, just waiting. Wouldn't move until every kid was seen." Hannah's chest tightened. Where was she stationed? "Jordan," the woman said. 7 years ago. She laughed softly. "She used to send me pictures. Said she never forgot those eyes." Hannah couldn't speak. The woman smiled again, then walked on. Whisk didn't move. He just breathed, slow and calm. Later that night, Hannah pulled a folded paper from her old duffel bag. It was a list of names. Soldiers, nurses, doctors. Most of them had scattered after the mission ended. Some still kept in touch. One name stood out. Alicia Nunez, field nurse. Ran half the pediatric unit in the clinic. If anyone would remember that dog, it would be her. Hannah found her email after searching for over an hour. She stared at the message box before typing. Subject, therapy dog. Maddie? Hi Alicia. I know this is out of the blue, and I'm sorry if this hits hard, but I think I found him. The dog. From the clinic. The one the kids used to sleep beside. I think he made it out. His name's Whisk now, and he's with me. I found a tag inside his collar. It said Maddie. Do you remember? She hit send. Her hands were shaking. Not out of fear, just something bigger. Like the pieces of her past were finally being pulled together after being scattered for too long. She didn't expect a reply soon. But the next morning it was there. From Alicia Nunez. Oh my God. Hannah, if you're right, if that's him, I need to see him. I need to know he's still here. We called him Ghost. That was his field name. Because he moved like one. Quiet. Always there. Never in the way. He used to sleep in the medical tent. Wouldn't eat until the last kid was done for the day. The kids trusted him before they trusted us. We never knew what happened after Maddie died. There was confusion. The clinic was closing. One day he was just gone. Please tell me this isn't a dream. Where are you? Hannah read the message twice. Then again. She swallowed the lump in her throat and typed back. I'm 2 hours from Phoenix. You can come. Anytime. Alicia wrote back almost immediately. I'm coming this weekend. Saturday came fast. Hannah cleaned the house, not because she cared how it looked, but because she needed to do something with her hands. She vacuumed twice, rearranged the chairs, then put them back. She even wiped down the old picture frames in the hallway that she usually avoided. Pictures of her mom, her niece, one of her in uniform, before she understood what that uniform would cost her. Whisk followed her around the whole day. Not in the way, not demanding, just there, always there. She didn't talk much while she cleaned, but when she sat on the couch for a break, she looked at him and said, You ready to see someone who knew you before I did? His ears twitched. That was the closest thing to a yes he ever gave. Alicia pulled into the driveway right before sunset. Hannah watched from the window as a small, silver car parked crooked near the mailbox. A woman stepped out slowly, holding a phone in one hand and a bag in the other. Her hair was shorter than before, streaked with gray, but her posture was the same. Tired, focused, still holding everything together because someone had to. Hannah opened the front door before Alicia could knock. Hey! Alicia said softly. Her eyes scanned Hannah's face, then the hallway, then the shape behind her. Is that? Hannah nodded once. Whisk stepped forward, calm and quiet. Alicia covered her mouth with one hand. Her voice broke. That's him. She crouched slowly, resting both hands on her knees. Hey, Ghost, she whispered. You remember me? Whisk stepped closer. Not fast, just steady. He sniffed the air once, then leaned forward, pressing the side of his head gently into her shoulder. Alicia gasped. Her eyes filled with tears. Oh my God, you're still here. They sat on the living room floor for almost an hour. Hannah didn't interrupt. She just watched. Alicia told story after story. About the kids, the tents, the late nights when the air was thick with sweat and fear. About how Ghost would lay beside a crying child and breathe with them until they stopped shaking. About how he once refused to leave the room of a boy with a high fever for almost 20 hours straight. We thought he was going to die, Alicia said, wiping her eyes. But he didn't. And when he finally woke up, Ghost was still there. She laughed softly. That boy called him his angel. Hannah nodded, staring at Whisk, now asleep near Alicia's side. You said they called him Ghost? She asked. Alicia nodded. Yeah. But Maddie, he renamed him. He couldn't pronounce Ghost. So he said Whisk. Like whiskers. We all just started calling him that. Hannah froze. He said Whisk. Alicia smiled. Yeah, you remember that? No, Hannah said slowly. I didn't know that. I just said it. First night he was here. It came out of nowhere. Alicia stared at her. He remembered. The words landed heavy. Hannah looked away. Her hands were clenched in her lap. He's been helping me, she said. Since day one. I didn't ask him to. He just knew. Alicia reached out and placed a hand on Hannah's shoulder. That's what he does. That's what he's always done. They didn't talk much after that. Alicia slept on the couch. Whisk stayed between them, one ear always twitching. Like even now he was still working. Still guarding. The next morning, over coffee, Alicia said, You know, when the clinic closed, a lot of records got lost. People got moved. Some kids didn't make it out. Some animals, too. Hannah nodded slowly. He did. Barely, Alicia said. But maybe he was meant to find you. Hannah looked out the window. Or maybe we both just survived longer than we thought we would. Alicia left that afternoon. She hugged Whisk, then Hannah. Thank you, she whispered, for keeping him alive. Hannah didn't answer. She didn't need to. Alicia already knew. That night, the house felt quiet again, but not lonely. Hannah sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a warm mug. Whisk lay nearby, sleeping deeper than she'd seen in weeks. She watched him breathe, steady, unbothered, safe. I don't think I saved you, she whispered. I think you found me because we were both still looking for a reason to stay. He didn't move, but she knew he heard her. He always did. A week later, the call came from a man named Ray. He ran a small group out of a rented space behind a church 2 towns over. Nothing formal. Just a few chairs, a pot of coffee, and people who didn't talk much unless they really needed to. He had heard about Hannah from someone at the vet's office. I know this is sudden, he said over the phone, but someone mentioned your dog, said he's not like other dogs. Hannah hesitated. He's quiet. That's all. Ray laughed softly. Yeah, that's exactly what we need. She didn't plan to go. She didn't like being in rooms with strangers. Didn't like the way people looked at her when she didn't say anything. But something about the way Ray spoke made her pause. And something about Whisk made her think maybe it was time. So that Thursday evening, she got in the truck. Whisk jumped into the passenger side without being told. They drove mostly in silence. A little music from the radio, but not enough to fill the space between them. The building was small and old, the windows slightly fogged from inside. She parked near the back and sat for a few minutes before getting out. Whisk followed. When she opened the door, the warm smell of stale coffee and wood polish met her. 3 men and 2 women sat in a rough circle of folding chairs. No one looked up at first. Ray stood from his seat near the corner and walked over. Hannah, she nodded. This is Whisk, she said. Ray crouched and held out his hand. Whisk stepped forward, gave a small sniff, then sat down beside Hannah. Good boy, Ray said gently. They joined the circle. People introduced themselves with first names only. Most didn't go into detail, just small things. Used to be Army, or retired after the second tour. Hannah said nothing for the first 20 minutes. Then someone across from her, a man with thick arms and tired eyes, shifted in his seat and muttered, I haven't been able to sleep in 6 months. Not without pills. Not without panic. The others stayed quiet. Hannah looked down at Whisk, who was sitting upright, not fidgeting, not looking around. Watching the man. The man rubbed his palms on his jeans. Even my kids stay away now. I don't snap, but I flinch too much. Makes them nervous. He lowered his head. Hell, makes me nervous. Without being asked, Whisk stood and walked across the room. He moved slow, careful. He stopped right in front of the man's chair. The man froze. Whisk didn't do anything. He didn't jump or lick or demand. He just leaned his shoulder gently against the man's shin and stood still. The man blinked down at him. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Then he put one hand on Whisk's back. Not petting, just resting there. The room was silent. The man cleared his throat. I don't know why that helps. But it does. Whisk stood there another minute, then walked back to Hannah and sat down beside her again. Ray looked at her. He does that often? Hannah nodded once. Only when it's needed. After the meeting, the man came up to her. What's his name? Whisk. He yours? She looked at Whisk, then back at him. No, I think I'm his. The man gave a dry chuckle. Then he got quiet. You think you'd still be here if it weren't for him? She didn't answer right away. Her throat tightened. She looked at Whisk again. His head tilted slightly, like he was listening. Always listening. She gave a soft breath. No, she said. I don't. That night, she didn't turn on the lights when they got home. She just stood in the dark with her hand on the doorknob for a long time. Then she walked into the kitchen, sat at the table and cried. Not the loud kind. Just a steady, quiet kind of crying that had no shape to it. Whisk didn't try to stop her. He didn't get up. He just laid down near her feet and stayed. The next morning, she opened her laptop and wrote an email. Not a long one. Just enough. Subject: Inquiry. Hi Ray. I was wondering if your group ever visits schools. Maybe just to talk. Or to let the kids meet Whisk. No pressure. Just thinking. Hannah. She didn't expect a reply right away. But by afternoon, there it was. Absolutely. There's a middle school teacher I know who's been looking for someone like you. They've had a hard year. I'll set it up. The visit was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Nothing formal. Just a conversation in the library with a small group of students. Hannah wasn't sure what she would say. She hadn't spoken in front of more than 5 people in 2 years. But she figured it didn't have to be polished. Just real. And Whisk would be there. They arrived early. The school smelled like pencils and floor wax. A staff member greeted them and led them through a quiet hallway. Kids peeked out of classrooms as they passed. Whisk stayed close. Calm. Focused. He always was. Inside the library, a semicircle of chairs had been set up. A few students were already waiting. All of them looked tired. Some were slouched in their chairs. Some were tapping their knees. No one said anything. Hannah stood awkwardly near the center. One of the teachers cleared her throat. Everyone, this is Hannah, and this is Whisk. They're here to talk a little about healing. One girl in the front raised her hand without lifting her eyes. Is he a therapy dog? Hannah looked at Whisk. He was sitting beside her chair, head slightly tilted. He's a listener, she said. That's what he does best. The room stayed quiet. Then a boy in the back said, What does he listen to? Hannah looked down at Whisk. Everything we don't say out loud. The teacher smiled. A few heads nodded. One girl shifted forward in her chair. Did he help you? He still does, Hannah said. Every day. Another hand went up. Did he go to war? Hannah paused. He went where the hurt was. After a few minutes, the kids were invited to come sit closer. One by one, they approached. Some just watched him. Others asked to pet him. Whisk sat still. Not stiff. Just present. Like he understood the weight in that room and was willing to carry some of it. After the visit, the teacher pulled Hannah aside. We've had 2 losses this year, she said softly. One to suicide. One to cancer. These kids. They don't know how to talk about grief yet. But you gave them something real today. You didn't come in trying to teach. You came in just being. Hannah didn't know what to say, so she said thank you. That night, she sat on the porch with Whisk and watched the streetlights flicker on. I think we can do more, she whispered. Not save people. Just sit with them. Like you did with me. She took out her phone and typed a message to Ray. What would you think of starting a space for people and animals like us? His reply came fast. I'd say it's overdue. They met the following week in a borrowed rec center behind an old post office. The walls were thin, the chairs were mismatched, and the heater made a soft hum in the corner. But it was a start. Hannah brought coffee in a thermos and paper cups. Ray brought a whiteboard he never used. Whisk sat by the door like a doorman who didn't need a badge. The group stayed small at first. Just 4 people. One woman who'd lost her husband in Iraq. One man who used to fly medevac helicopters. Another who didn't say what branch he'd served in, just that the silence afterward was the loudest part. They didn't talk much the first meeting. Hannah didn't push them to. She sat in a folding chair with Whisk curled beside her. And after 20 minutes of half-hearted updates and long pauses, someone finally said it. "I'm tired of pretending the worst parts are behind me." The others nodded. Not with drama, just truth. Hannah said nothing, but she reached down and rested her hand on Whisk's back. His tail moved once. That's how the group started. Once a week. No pressure. No speeches. Just a room where the broken didn't have to explain why they were still hurting. A month passed. Then 2. People started showing up early. Some brought cookies. Some brought stories. One man brought his wife. She cried during the second session and hugged Hannah on the way out. "He hasn't talked like this in years," she whispered. "You don't know what this means." Hannah just nodded. Because she did. One day, Hannah checked her mailbox and found a plain envelope. No return address. The handwriting was shaky. It was addressed to Whisk's handler. "If you're reading this, thank you." Her fingers trembled slightly as she tore it open. Inside was a letter. "I don't know if this will ever reach the right person, but I'm writing it anyway. My name is Karen Donaldson. I'm Maddie's aunt. I was with him during his last year. He talked about the dog every day. He didn't remember much else, but he remembered the way that dog would sit by him all night, and how he didn't feel afraid when the dog was breathing beside him. When Maddie passed, we searched for that dog. We wanted to adopt him, keep him, love him, but no one knew where he went. It broke my heart, because in his last days that dog was the only thing he asked for. If you're the person who has him now, thank you. You're not just giving a dog a second chance. You're carrying the last piece of my nephew." Hannah sat down on the floor. Whisk walked over quietly and laid beside her. She placed the letter in her lap and leaned against the wall. "You stayed with him," she whispered, "and now you're staying with me." She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a small wooden box beside her photos. Then she reached for her notebook and wrote a few words on a blank page. He never left. He just waited for the right person to need him again. Whisk blinked slowly, then rested his head on her foot. The next group meeting, Hannah brought the letter. She didn't read it out loud. She just held it in her hand and said, "Sometimes the people we lose leave things behind that still have work to do." No one asked questions. They didn't need to. The new guy came in late. His name was Jack. Early 30s, beard grown out, sleeves pushed up like he couldn't stand to feel covered. He didn't sit right away. Just stood near the door, arms folded, eyes scanning the room like he was deciding whether to bolt. Hannah didn't say anything. Neither did Ray. Whisk got up slowly. No rush, no announcement. Just stood, walked across the floor, and sat down near Jack's feet. Jack looked down. His jaw tightened. "He always do that?" Ray said, "Only when it matters." Jack sat, didn't speak for the first half hour. Then someone mentioned nightmares. Jack's hand curled into a fist. "Yeah," he muttered. "They don't stop. You think they do, and then you smell something, hear something, and it's like you're back there. Chest won't move. Hands won't listen." He shook his head. "Sometimes I sleep in the truck just to feel like I'm not in a room." Whisk leaned his body into Jack's leg. Jack went still. For the rest of the meeting, he kept one hand on Whisk's back. Said nothing else. Didn't need to. After the session, Hannah caught him outside by his truck. "You coming back next week?" He gave a small shrug. "Guess I will. If he's gonna be there." He nodded at Whisk. "That dog. He's real calm." Hannah smiled. "Yeah, he's had a lot of practice." Jack looked at her. "I don't know where you found him, but he found something in me I didn't know was left." She didn't respond, just nodded. That was enough. Later that night, she sat by the window with Whisk beside her and opened her notebook again. Not every miracle looks like light. Some look like waiting. Some look like listening. Some come on 4 legs, quiet, steady, and scarred. And they stay. Spring rolled in slow. The support group grew. Not big, just enough. Word spread. Not fast, not loud. Just real. Hannah didn't think about the past as much. It was still there. It always would be. But it didn't reach for her the same way anymore. She and Whisk walked every morning now. Not far. Just down the block and back. He stayed close. He always had. One morning, a neighbor she'd never spoken to waved and said, "That dog of yours has such kind eyes." Hannah nodded. "He's got a kind heart too." She didn't explain. She didn't need to. The last scene came not with a bang, but a choice. She sat across from Ray after one of the meetings. Papers on the table. A flyer for an animal-assisted therapy program that had reached out. "They want you to train," Ray said. "Officially. Build this thing into something bigger." Hannah stared at the page. "I'm not a speaker. I'm not a leader." Ray leaned back. "No, you're someone who shows up, who listens, who stays, and that's what makes it work." She looked at Whisk, curled up beside her bag. "I only started because of him." Ray nodded. "Exactly." She didn't say yes that night. She just sat there, fingers brushing the edge of the paper. Then she reached down, touched Whisk's fur, and whispered, "You stayed. Now it's my turn." He didn't move, just opened one eye, and stayed. "Thank you to my amazing family for staying with me until the end of this story. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed this journey, I just know you'll love what comes next. I've prepared something even more exciting and surprising that I can't wait to share with you. Just click on the end card appearing on your screen right now to watch the next one.